What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we have a very, very exciting episode for you guys. We are going to be talking Dynasty, as always, another episode of Let's Talk Dynasty. But we have just started episode 1 of our 4-part series where we are going to be discussing every division in the NFL, talking about what happened last year, talking about projections this year, and then most importantly, talking about all of the fantasy relevant players drafted within the top 200 as far as underdog ADP goes. We're going to be discussing all of that for you guys here on today's show. We got the Norths today, so we're going to talk about these guys in the back, NFC North, and we're also going to be talking about the AFC North. So I hope you guys are excited, ready to go, and just as eager as we are. I do see that we have some people in the chat. Matt Bowers, he says, man held that pose till the camera came on. Salute. Don't laugh. Of course. Got to do it every day when we're doing these live streams. So anyways, let's get our co-host MFGDs in the building so we can talk some Dynasty Fantasy Football. War, what's good, man?
Yo, what it do? I'm ready to talk about some NFC North. Let's do it, baby.
Oh, I am sure. I like it in the background, man. And I see the light upgrade.
Yeah, man. Yeah, trying to get a little something popping.
Okay, all right, leveling it up over here. But I don't really want to waste any time. We got a action-packed show. Like I said, we're going to talk 8 teams today, so let's not waste too much time with news and notes. Biggest news in the NFL right now is probably the Hard Knocks episode releasing yesterday. I said it made Aaron Rodgers likable. You thumbs that down when I put it in our group chat.
Yeah, I haven't even seen the episode. The name Aaron Rodgers just makes me thumb it down instantly.
Well, that's what happens when you terrorize the NFC North, I guess. And Matt says the myth war ghost. So I guess you've been ghost on him, is what he's saying. But uh, let's talk about our first team here, man. And like I said, we're gonna go to the AFC. We're gonna start in the AFC because I figured we would save our favorites for last because we're probably gonna be a little bit more passionate about that NFC North. But we're going to start with the AFC North, and we're going to start with the team that has projected the least amount of wins in the AFC this season. And I say the AFC North, not the AFC, but that's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Pittsburgh Steelers have a projected win total of 8.5 wins. War. How do you feel about that number? Does that feel okay for you as far as that goes? They won 9 games last year.
I feel pretty good about it. I feel like the Steelers are capable of winning 10 games every season, no matter what's going on. That's just my immense respect for the organization, my immense respect for Coach Mike Tomlin, and just their ability to put supreme wide receiver and offensive talent on the field, as well as their ability to have a capable defense year in and year out. 8.5 wins. I think it all lies on the shoulders of Kenny Pickett. If Kenny Pickett could take even a small step, you got the running game. Let's see if the defense can hold up. I think you can see Pittsburgh squeak in around 10 wins.
Yeah, and like I said, last year they finished 9-8, so they would have went over that number. They did finish the season though. That last month of the season, they were on a 4-game win streak, so they did finish pretty hot. Kenny Pickett, obviously, we said he needs to take that step forward this year. At least I'm sure that is what Pittsburgh Steelers fans want to see is him take that next step. I'm confident he can do it. I'm confident he has the weapons around him. The offensive line got a little bit better this offseason. But as we talk about Kenny Pickett, I kind of want to talk about the ADPs of these guys. These are underdogs, Superflex ADPs. So we're only going to be talking about the top 200. Really, if they're not being drafted in the top 200 in your guys' leagues this year, they're probably not going to be fantasy football relevant. Sure, there's guys that are going to be picked up off the waiver wires that we don't get on draft day. But for the most part, this should have you covered. And really, nobody going in the top 50. War. The first guy coming off the board is going to be quarterback Kenny Pickett with an ADP of 50. Najee Harris will follow up at 53. Deontay Johnson, the 84th guy off the board. Pickens, the 104th guy off the board. Fryermuth, 120, and Jalen Warren, 145. Is there really anything on here that speaks to you as far as this team goes?
No, not really. I feel like the Steelers, because of Kenny Pickett, the Steelers are just the great unknown. I mean, what are they going to do? It's literally all hinging on the shoulders of Kenny Pickett. I mean, Najee Harris, is a standalone to a degree, but he's seen some injuries. There's been some questions about Najee. Um, Nothing speaks to me about that. I think this is just like a big prove year for the entire roster. Like either you're in either one or two camps. Either you're down on Pittsburgh, you think Deontay Johnson is Deontay drops in, you think George Pickens isn't going to do much because Kenny Pickett isn't going to do much. You think Najee Harris is mid, or you think those guys have a lot of potential to step it up. So I mean, it's just a we'll see type of situation.
Yeah, and just to put some numbers to that, I'll throw these ADPs back up there so you guys can kind of follow along. But Kenny Pickett there with the 50 overall ADP, he's being drafted as quarterback 22. Najee is being drafted as running back 13. Deontay and George Pickens are being drafted wide receiver 29 and wide receiver 39. Fryermuth's tight end 10, and Jalen Warren's running back 44. So I think to me, man, if Kenny Pickett does take that step forward, and if he does do what we think he's going to do, are you confident in saying you think he will take a step forward this year?
Yes.
Yes, I am too,
I
and
think
I
I
think
think I don't think I don't see Pittsburgh as the type of team that would like stay put at quarterback if they didn't feel like that quarterback was capable of at least getting them some more wins.
Yeah, and I think, him coming off the board as that quarterback 22, if he does take that step forward, which we both seem to think that he will, that seems like you might get a little bit of a value in your super flex leagues on Kenny Pickett. He's being drafted at the low end of QB2s, so maybe there's some value there. Deontay Johnson and George Pickens are being drafted as wide receiver threes and wide receiver fours. Uh, I I think it feels about accurate to me there. Frymuth, a low end tight end one, that feels accurate. Najee Harris is a high end RB2, low end RB1. Maybe some value there depending on how healthy he is, because we know he did not look good at the beginning of last year when it
Mhm.
came to the health, but he was also playing with a plate in his shoe, is what he said. And so I just want to pull up the game log here. At the beginning of the season, fantasy points per games finishes weeks 1 through 7. There's a lot of running back 30, running back 21, 41, 45, 27. It's not good for Najee Harris. But as you get to the back half of the year, it's running back 15, 17, 13, 9, 13. So it kind of was it's kind of a two-part story for Najee Harris. The first half was bad. The second half looked fine.
Mhm.
And I think they're drafting him, obviously coming off of the board as that running back 13. They're kind of drafting him thinking that the second half of the year is actually what you're going to get. How confident are you that Najee is that back half of the year?
When it comes, okay, so as we've discussed on this show, and you've discussed on that show several times, it's all about usage and opportunity. I think that Najee's that back as long as he's healthy. I mean, I don't think it's a talent issue with Najee. I think it's like a health issue. If he's banged up, he's not as good. If he's healthy, he's pretty good because the usage is there. So, I mean, I think if he's healthy, then he's that back in that second half.
Are you worried about Jalen Warren at all? I know he's getting some
Not at
buzz in the
all.
Dynasty community.
No.
No, I really am not either. I know he's getting some buzz, but I think he's a handcuff, and I think he uh, will look good if Najee misses time. But I think for the most part, he's going to be a backup to
Yeah.
Najee. That's kind of his role. So
Yeah.
um, glad we're on the same page there. Uh, so let's move on to our next team here, and coming in as number 3, or projected to be number 3 in the AFC North, is going to be the Cleveland Browns. And so their projected win total is just a game ahead. They're projected at 9.5 wins. And coming off of a season last year where they won 7 games, obviously they had a Deshaun Watson suspension for most of the year. So Jacoby Brissett was playing games to start the season, still went 7-10. Do you feel like the 9.5 wins is a fair number? Is it too high? Is it too low?
I think it's too high. Um, I just don't see it, man. Like Deshaun Watson, until he shows me that he's the quarterback that he used to be, he's not the quarterback that he was. And if he's not that quarterback, I don't see them winning 10 games. I just don't see it. I think that this has become almost like a year in, year out thing where people think the Cleveland Browns are going to have a successful season, whether it's Baker Mayfield or Deshaun Watson. These guys always fall short. So, no, I don't think they're going to win. I don't think they're going to beat their win total. And I'll have to be proven wrong with that.
Yeah, and I mean, just let's keep in mind here too that this is a very tough division. You have Baltimore, you have Cincinnati, you have Pittsburgh, who we just gave props to as well. They got to play those teams twice a year. Getting that, because what you're betting, if you're betting the over, you're betting 10 wins, and getting
Yeah.
that double digit win season, um, it's tough. It's tough in that division. I think I'm with you where I would not be going the over on this one. I think I would be going under 9.5 wins. And I guess we'll be proven wrong if Deshaun Watson snaps back to form. If he does, it's very capable that he could snap back to form. And if he does, then they could definitely be a 10-win team. But it's just gonna be like you said. We gotta see it. But as we're talking about some of the guys that are gonna hopefully make this happen for them, let's talk about some of the players being drafted in the top 200. And highest ADP in these super flex leagues is going to be Deshaun Watson, like we just talked about. ADP of 11.5 coming off the board is QB9. Nick Chubb is coming off the board at 26.8. That's good for running back 4 in fantasy football this year. A top 4 running back in Nick Chubb. Amari Cooper coming off the board, ADP 59. That's good for wide receiver 18. Elijah Moore, the new wide receiver that is likely going to play in that slot role, 111.7. Good for wide receiver 43. David Njoku, 118.5, good for tight end 9, actually higher than Freiermuth. So I'm interested to debate that here. And then Jerome Ford and Donovan Peoples-Jones going late, as you can see, respectable for RB 50 and wide receiver 74. So does any of that mean much to you? I guess really I want to talk first and foremost about the Nick Chubb thing because he's being drafted as the running back 4 in fantasy football. So how do you feel about that, War?
I think the fantasy community is extremely high on Nick Chubb without Kareem Hunt being there, and I'm down with that. I'm totally down with that. I think that Nick Chubb is going to have an amazing season if he's healthy. Um, I do have some questions about who's going to back up Nick Chubb. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity there. I feel like they have a lot of, with all due respect, scrubs behind Nick Chubb, and I could definitely see them signing a running back and free agent, maybe a Daryl Henderson, maybe even Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, we'll see, but I would definitely have my eye out for whoever could potentially be coming to back up Nick Chubb. If they go into the season with Nick Chubb, with the cast of guys they have behind him right now, oh man, it's going to be barbecue chicken in the backfield. I think that Nick Chubb is going to run wild on everybody, and yeah, running back 4, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, rightfully so. When it comes down to one of the best, we talk about it all the time in the NFL, and we use this term "best pure runner." When we use that term, guys like Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb come to mind, and you could argue that Nick Chubb is one of the best pure runners in the NFL. The thing is that historically he hasn't been used in the passing game, and you've already touched on that, where you said, with Kareem Hunt out of there, there's potential where he could be utilized in the passing game. I've seen
Yeah,
some articles come out where Stefanski has said that he's going to kind of use him a little bit more. Watson's talked about using him a little bit more in the passing game. And it'll be interesting to see if Nick Chubb steps up and is able to do that because we've never seen him do that, not even at the collegiate level. So it'll be interesting to watch that develop. And then, kind of like you said, there's not a lot of guys behind him. I mean, I think everybody's favorite and clearly the ADP favorite to back him up is going to be Jerome Ford. Jerome did suffer a hamstring injury, so he is week to week. Demetric Felton looked decent in their Hall of Fame game. He looked pretty solid. John Kelly looked okay. So I think you're right. They might not have the backup on the roster yet. And it's really going to come down to how injured is Jerome Ford. I think they've shown that they're comfortable if he's healthy, but if he's not healthy, they're going to go get a guy. I'm almost confident in that. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. But Nick Chubb at number 4, it kind of worries me from a single season standpoint and a redraft standpoint, because it feels like if you are drafting him as the running back 4, you're almost drafting him at the ceiling. There's not a lot of room for him to improve at that ADP. So it feels like there's not a lot of wiggle room for you to improve. It seems like there's more risk when you're drafting him at the ceiling.
yeah. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I mean, this is a huge risk. I'm not going to say that drafting Nick Chubb at that position isn't without risk. I mean, there's definitely some risk. Just even, I feel like he's been utilized a lot, even though he's had Kareem Hunt.
Mhm.
Um, that's kind of high. If you could get him, what round would you say if you could get Nick Chubb? Would you consider it a steal?
Well, assuming we're talking about these super flex ADPs, I would say that if I can take Nick Chubb, um, probably in the third round. If you can get him in the third round, that feels like a steal. Because I think the price that you have to pay right now is that mid to late second. Uh, so if you can get him in the third round, that feels like you're starting to get a value on him.
Honestly, I don't feel comfortable drafting any running back that early.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and you know how I am with my quarterbacks in super flex leagues. I like to get 2 of them quickly. So
yeah,
usually I'm going to use 2 of those first 3 or 4 picks that I have on quarterbacks, and then you got to think you got to add a wide receiver, or a tight end, or whatever in there during that as well. So you got to start making some roster decisions. But quarterback is what I like to focus on. So if I can fall into a Nick Chubb that lands on my roster this season at a value, more than happy to take it. But I'm not seeking to reach for a Nick Chubb to be my guy at the running back position.
No, I agree.
And just to give you, I mean, the ADP is not wrong. Like you said, it feels like that's what he does. And fantasy points per game over the last 3 seasons of being in the NFL, top 7 in 2020, top 10 in 2021, and top 6 last year in 2022. So you remove Kareem Hunt, maybe he gets just a little bit of the passing game. He's already been a top 10 back every year in the NFL as far as points per game goes. It just Nick Chubb's just good, man. He's just a good player. So don't want to spend too much more time talking about Nick Chubb, but what I do want to talk to you about is how do you feel about the receiving options? Cedric Tillman's a rookie of theirs that didn't get the ADP in the top 200 yet, so he's likely not somebody you're going to be drafting. But he's probably going to be battling it out with Donovan Peoples-Jones for the outside wide receiver job. And then Elijah Moore and Amari Cooper on the other side. How do you feel about this wide receiver room? Does it feel like there's value there? The highest one being drafted is Cooper at wide receiver 18.
I feel like the Browns wide receivers are standard. They're pretty standard. Amari, if I could have Amari as like maybe the wide receiver 3 on my team, or even the flex, which is like going to be difficult. I feel good about it. Obviously, you want to have Elijah on your team. I don't really care about Peoples Jones or Tillman. Um, so I mean, yeah, if Amari is my third wide receiver, and that's if I have a juggernaut as my wide receiver 1. So if I have JJ as my wide receiver 1, or CeeDee Lamb, and then have Amari
Tyreek.
as my wide receiver 3, one of those guys, then I feel pretty damn good about it.
Fair
But
enough.
other than that, I feel like overall as a group, I feel like the Browns wide receivers are pretty standard. And again, that's tied to Deshaun Watson. If Deshaun Watson comes back and recaptures his form, then obviously I'm going to feel a lot better about the Browns receiving weapons.
Yeah. I like Amari Cooper as a wide receiver. I've been drafting him on a lot of my best ball teams this year. But last year was wide receiver 17 in fantasy points per game. He's being drafted as wide receiver 18 off the board. It feels fair. It's a fair assessment. It's a fair price. You're not going to get a value with Amari Cooper, but I think you'll get a good wide receiver. But I think the pick that I like the most, man, on this team is I do like the Elijah Moore pick. He's being drafted as that wide receiver 43. Sure, Elijah Moore could be nothing. It's possible that he could be nothing, but at wide receiver 43 off the board, picking him as the 111th player, I don't feel like you lose out on much. You spend that pick on him, and if it is nothing, then who cares? It was a late pick. But I think the ceiling for Elijah Moore is pretty high, especially if there were to be an injury to Amari Cooper at any point this year. Elijah Moore could instantly become a top 20 wide receiver for fantasy football, because they're going to have to throw somebody the ball. And Elijah Moore is going to be, or is projected to be, the best wide receiver there outside of Cooper. So I think top 25 is in the range of outcomes for Elijah Moore this year, and he's being drafted as wide receiver 43.
I mean, again, if Deshaun Watson recaptures his form, we could be looking at, and obviously they're probably 2 different wide receivers, but I'm talking about in terms of opportunity. We could definitely be looking at like Will Fuller with Deshaun Watson. I mean, we're talking about a healthy version of Will Fuller. I think a lot of people forget, man, Will Fuller has dug the graves of many fantasy opponents. Oh, it is. I mean, this dude's been put up 40-point, 50-point games before. Like, I'm super surprised that he's not in the league right now.
Yeah. I mean, when you go and look at our league history and some of our leagues, on Sleeper, it shows you the highest scoring weeks or single season performances or single week performances by players. And if you go look in like our redraft league that we've been in for many years, Will Fuller's name pops up in there 2 or 3 times because
Yeah,
he had like a 50-point week, a 47-point week, and so on.
yeah,
So
yeah. So I mean, if you're getting prime Deshaun Watson with Elijah Moore, who probably is more talented than Will Fuller, I mean, just imagine that. I dare I say, and this might be sounds like blasphemy. Dare I say that Elijah Moore actually, if Deshaun Watson again recapture his form, there's like a world in my mind. There's a world where Elijah Moore could surpass Amari.
there's a world. I think there's a world.
World.
I wouldn't bet the house on it, but there's a
No, I
world.
wouldn't either.
Um, But yeah, man, I don't feel like. I guess let's briefly touch on Njoku. He's being drafted as a low end tight end 1, as tight end 9 off the board. How do you feel about Njoku? Is that a good price, a bad price? Personally, for me, I don't really I don't really want to draft Njoku on my rosters.
I've never liked Njoku. Njoku's a typical ceiling of a 9 to 10 points game type of player. I don't think he's better than Cole Kmet or Pat Frymuth. Shout out to Brett. Um, I I'm not a Njoku guy, man. Like the fact that he's ranked above Frymuth is just laughable to me.
It's
Completely laughable. I don't know who they think Njoku is. It has
I
to
don't
be
know.
a joke.
There you go. Marshall's in here pumping up Njoku. That's his guy. Uh, but Njoku's coming off the best year of his career so far, and when I say the best year of his career, temper your expectations because it was 600 yards and 4 touchdowns. That is the best year of his career so far. Fantasy points per games, he was being that was tight end 8. I don't know, man. I think Njoku is what he is at this point, and low end tight end 1 numbers would be a good year for him, I think. If that's what you drafted him as. I just don't like where he's being drafted at. And when it comes down to it, I think it might sound disrespectful, and I'm sorry, Browns fans, if you're tapping in and this is gonna upset you, but I think the differences between a guy like David Njoku and a guy like Gerald Everett
Tyler
or
Higbee.
yeah, Gerald Everett, Tyler Higbee, Greg Dulcich, like those types of guys, it's not that big of a difference, but you can get those guys that we just mentioned 6 rounds later, 7 rounds later. So it's going to be interesting to say or to see. Marshall says second in red zone targets last year. I think a full year with Watson will only benefit him. And my only my only argument to
Marshall,
contradict that
listen to
statement
Marshall.
is
Marshall, listen to
they didn't have Elijah Moore last year.
Look. Well, real quick, let me address Marshall because I'm sick of him popping his head in the door, making comments. Listen, Marshall, we all know the rap's out on you, man. You're loyal. You're blindly loyal to your little group of players, Cooper Cup, guys like that. And
Eckler.
yes, you're going to beat the drum for Eckler. You're going to beat the drum for Njoku. But we all know the truth that he's mid, and mid may even be too much of giving him credit. So,
Yeah.
sorry.
Anyways, I'm with you, War. I think the ADP is fine, but I won't be touching him at tight end 9. I guess
No.
I can see the upside, but tight end 8 last year without Elijah Moore, and then you add Elijah Moore to take a little bit of targets away. You're going to be banking on touchdowns, and I don't like to bank on touchdowns. I rather bank on guys who are the second receiving option in their offense. I don't think Njoku is going to be that for the tight end position. But let's go over to the number 2 team in that division, the AFC North, and that's going to be the Baltimore Ravens. So projected at 10.5 wins. Last year they had 10 wins. They went 10-7, finished the year on a 2-game losing streak. But keep in mind, Lamar Jackson did not play the full year, and neither did Mark Andrews. And neither did J.K. Dobbins. And they also didn't have this guy, Zay Flowers, that is on the screen as well. So pretty much everybody on the screen right now missed games or didn't play for them last year, and they won 10 games. So, War, how do you feel about a line of 10.5 with this roster right now in Baltimore?
Out of respect for Brandon, I want to say I feel good about the line being 10.5. But I do. It's not a confident feel good. It's not a confident feel good. I don't know what we're gonna get out of Lamar. Is he gonna pull up lame and squeeze his hamstring? He's gonna have to shit during the game. I don't know. You never know what you're gonna get with Lamar Jackson. I don't know. He got the big contract. How is he gonna respond to that? How is J.K. Dobbins even gonna play? Are we gonna be looking at Melvin Gordon Fumblerooski led backfield? Is Lamar going to be able to connect with more receivers than Mark Andrews? We don't know. If all those things, if at least half of those things go right, yes, we could get a 10-11 win Baltimore Ravens, but I'll be confident in it. He has some weapons now. I felt like he's always did. I feel like he could have did more with the weapons he had before, but who am I? Um, we'll see, man. I'll ride with that over, but it's not confident.
Yeah. I mean, you said they could pull 10, 11. If they did 10, they'd be on the underside. So it's tough to say that
It's
you
hard
could
to say
very
any team is
confidently.
just going to win 11 games, man.
Yeah, it's tough, right?
Like,
Like once the lines get that high, it's really hard for me to confidently go over unless it's like a team like the Bills, the Chiefs, the Bengals, like some of these like elite teams that have been in conference championships over the years. But yeah, man, I think at 10 and a half, I think they can do it. As long as, like you said, the guys stay healthy. Hopefully Dobbins doesn't hold out. He's been holding out of training camp, but
yeah.
I think they can do it. It just seems high. But let's talk about some of the players that are going to help them do it if they can get over that 10 and a half. And coming off in the top 200, very, very high. The fourth player overall, Lamar Jackson. Good for let me actually I am slacking over here. Lamar Jackson, good for the QB4 overall as the fourth player. Mark Andrews, 42nd player overall, good for tight end 2. Then you got J.K. Dobbins with an ADP of 82.2, good for running back 20. And then it gets to who is going to be the wide receiver 1, because you have Zay Flowers at 113, Bateman at 122, and Odell at 140. And all of those guys are wide receiver 44, wide receiver 47, and wide receiver 54. So it seems like drafters currently think Zay Flowers will be the number 1 wide receiver when it's all said and done. And then just like clockwork, man, Gus Edwards finds himself in the top 200 players, backing up J.K. Dobbins for what feels like a century at this point. But he's coming off the board as the 187th player, and that's good for running back 58. So, Ward, talk to me a little bit about these players. First and foremost, how do you feel about Lamar being the 4th quarterback off of the board in drafts this year?
Let's see. So some combination of Mahomes, Allen, um,
Hurts,
Mahomes,
Burrow.
Allen. Here's the thing. Here's what I want to know. Has the Joe Burrow injury impacted where Lamar is being taken? Because I do think that his injury creates some uncertainty in that spot. Me personally, not. Would I take Fields over Lamar Jackson? I don't know. I probably shouldn't, but I probably would. But
You're looking through those orange tinted lenses right there.
yeah, I mean, I'm just I thought I could get similar, if not better, production out of Fields this season, but later for that. I feel pretty good about it, man. Like I think all those guys. The only question I have, just amongst that group of wide receivers, is I don't know about Rashad Bateman. I don't know what that do. I feel like he's in for a very disappointing season. I don't know how you feel about that. Um,
I mean,
I
he
think
was just
I think
go ahead.
he's going to get the Elijah Moore treatment, the Elijah Moore New York Jet treatment. Like,
Yeah, I mean, he was just activated from the pup today, so we'll see what happens now that he's practicing, but he hasn't been practicing up to this point. Um, I think drafters up to this point have it right. I think if I'm making the bet on which one of them I want for the entirety of the season, it will be Zay Flowers. That's the guy that I would put my money on to lead this receiving room this year. And I just don't know how confident I am in Ravens wide receivers. Now they do get the OC change, so obviously we haven't seen with this play calling what Lamar Jackson can do with his wide receivers. However, they're all being drafted relatively low risk. Wide receiver 44 is the highest with Zay Flowers, so he is being drafted pretty much in your flex most weeks,
Yeah.
and it's low risk. I don't mind shooting upside on a guy like Zay Flowers. I will tell you what though, um, if it's not Zay Flowers, I don't want Bateman or Odell. I don't want either of those guys. I would
Not
really only
even that,
shoot
not even
Zay.
into the roster.
No, because I can't draft him at the end of the roster. He's only going a round or two behind Zay, and Rashad Bateman is going a round behind Zay. So I just I don't like the cost of them this year. I think for me, I'm still worried about JK until he shows up at practice. I think RB20 is kind of a decent value for him right now. If you're confident in taking that risk. Uh, but I think right now, man, I'm okay drafting Lamar. I'm okay drafting Mark Andrews, obviously. And then I'll take Zay Flowers. But outside of that, I just don't know how much I'm going to dabble in the Ravens offense this season. Maybe I'll take some Gus Edwards just in case JK holds out. Then you get a guy that gets some value, and he's coming off the board really late, almost the 190th player. So I just, there's not a lot of guys in here that I want. And I feel bad because, this offense could be a really good offense. I just don't have the confidence, and I don't know what I'm looking at when it comes to the Monken play calling. But Lamar, sure. Andrew, sure. Zay, sure. Everybody else, I may look at my other options when I'm on the board at that point.
Noted.
And I do want to talk a little bit because we've already talked about Lamar just a tiny bit. But it should be noted that when Lamar is healthy, he does ball for fantasy football because over the last 3 years, his lowest finish from a fantasy football points per game has been his 2020 season, which was good for QB8 overall. So being drafted as QB4, you're hoping that he's going to still run. You're hoping that the passing increases if you're drafting him at QB4, but um, definitely in your 4-point passing leagues, he's going to go higher. In your 6-point passing leagues, you might, take a Burrow or a Herbert over him. But yeah, I don't mind Lamar this year, man. I know Brandon's a big advocate for Lamar this year.
Why does it feel like he's underperformed though for the last 2 seasons? Is it because of the injuries or?
It's because 12 games played in 2021 and 12 games played in 2022. And when you needed Lamar Jackson the most for your fantasy football teams, he wasn't there.
That sounds about right. He wasn't there for the fantasy playoffs, so.
Yep. You were trying to grab Huntley off your waiver wire. And if you grabbed Huntley, still wasn't
That
enough
didn't help.
probably to win you. Yeah. So that's the way it's been for Lamar. But let's talk about the team last year that won the division, is projected to win the division again, but they have the same win total as Baltimore. It's 10.5 wins. Last year they won 12, finished the season on an 8-game win streak. So how do you feel about this one, War? Is 10.5 wins high or low?
I'm taking the under. And I love Joe Burrow. I love Jamar Chase. I love T. Higgins. Joe Mixon, not so much. But I love the Cincinnati Bengals. But I stand on this. That kid is hurt more than the coach is letting on. Did you see what he said today? He said, hold on. I want to say it verbatim. I
Are you
know I
talking
still
about the
have it
few
here.
weeks past a few weeks or something like that?
He said that Joe Burrow is several weeks away from the day he said he was several weeks away. So when he said he was several weeks away prior, the coach is saying that he's several weeks away from that now. So that tells me he's more hurt than what is letting on. This isn't just a simple calf strain that we're talking about. this kid is hurt. They're trying to conceal it. And until he gets a clean bill of health, I'm not saying they're going to win 11 games because they're not going to win 11 games if Joe Burrow is hurt. As simple as that. Who's his backup? Freaking, it's someone
Trevor
horrible.
Siemian.
Trevor Siemian, former Chicago. No, no, absolutely not.
I think you're right. There is that little bit of worry. If you ask Jamar Chase said that Joe should just sit until week 5. Just wait until week 5 and then play football. And that's his best friend on the team. So we'll see what that means. Read into it what you will, read into it what you won't.
I mean, he's really hurt.
I think we got a few more weeks until week 1's about to be around the corner. So keep your eye on Joe Burrow. It's just somebody to keep an eye on. But for me, if he's healthy, they're going to go over that 10.5.
Yeah.
If he's not healthy, then, to be seen. But I think if he's healthy, if he's not healthy, depending on how many games he misses, they probably won't get over that 10.5. But if he's healthy, I don't have a doubt in my mind that they'll win more than 11 games. But let's talk about some of the players here, because we just talked about Joe, and you see him here on the screen with the AFC champions hat and everything like that, being drafted as a QB5, so just one below Lamar Jackson. And then you have Jamar Chase coming off the board as the 10th player, which is good for wide receiver 2. T. Higgins, ADP of 44, good for wide receiver 14. Joe Mixon, ADP of 60, good for running back 15. Tyler Boyd, ADP of 133, good for wide receiver 51. Irv Smith, former Minnesota Viking, coming off the board is tight end 20 with an ADP of 164. And then Chase Brown creeping his way into the top 200 as of lately, 199.5, just barely made it. But he is coming off the board as running back 60. So, you seem to be worried about Joe Burrow here, and he has 2 wide receivers being drafted in the top 14.
Yeah.
Does that worry you about their ADPs as well?
If he's hurt, yeah. If he's hurt, yeah. And I'm fine with the placement of everybody on there except for maybe Mixon. There's a reason why Chase Brown is creeped up into the top 200. There's a reason. Everybody, look, I think that it's safe. I'm not going to say it's safe to assume. That's too strong. That's too strong of a. I would say that I don't think anybody will be surprised if the bottom fell out of Joe Mixon this season or very soon. Am I comfortable taking Joe Mixon 20 spots ahead of J.K. Dobbins? No, I'm not, because I don't think that what running back place? I don't know if you
20 spots.
But like as far as running back, Mixon is what, running back 15.
Yeah,
and
he's
J.K.
being drafted.
Dobbins, what, running back
20. So 5 spots, 5 running backs in between them.
I mean, I guess when you put it in that sense, they're basically in the same tier to me. But The name of this show is Let's Talk Dynasty. I'm taking J.K. Dobbins ahead of Joe Mixon. I'm taking him ahead of Joe Mixon. If this is Let's Talk Redraft, maybe not. But it's Let's Talk Dynasty. So I'm taking him ahead of Joe Mixon. I think even the fact that the Bengals were even considering getting Joe Mixon out of there tells me all I need to know about how much time this guy has left. I think he took a significant pay cut just to stay with the team. I mean, that's usually like the canary in the coal mine as far as like letting you know that a running back is on his way out of the team when they start trying to desperately stay with the team. So,
yeah, I hear the argument. I think for me, pure circumstance, Chase Brown and Chris Evans and Travion Williams and this mess of poor running backs behind them does not worry me for Joe Mixon in 2023. I think the opportunity is going to be there. And in fact, I would argue that this year, Joe Mixon is going to get more of the passing game usage than he's seen in his career because of Samaje Perine leaving. But from a fantasy points per game standpoint, last year he was top 7 overall, top 5 in 2021. Obviously, the floor is going to fall out from Joe Mixon eventually. It always does. That RBH cliff always does come and get you. But I'm confident. I'm confident in him this year, and I think being drafted at running back 15, I actually think he's kind of a value. I'm sure we disagree there, but I think he's kind of a value at running back 15. And then when it comes down to it, um, I just I'm not too worried about him from a dynasty perspective. And you brought up the J.K. Dobbins thing and compared the two. I'd argue that J.K. Dobbins hasn't shown as much as Joe Mixon has over the last couple of years, so Dobbins could be gone from the Ravens in a year or two, anyways. And
Very
so,
confident.
I just think Mixon's going to be better for now. And in running backs, even in Dynasty, we talk about how they should be the last piece of the roster that you put together. So if you're putting them together, you're probably looking to contend, and Joe Mixon's a better piece to contend with. So I just would say I'm not. I think there's a value on Joe Mixon. I'm not panicking over the wide receivers yet because I am not panicking over Joe Burrow yet, but we'll see kind of how this develops over the next couple of weeks. But other than that, how do you feel about Irv Smith, tight end 20? How do you feel about it?
I've never felt anything about Irv Smith. To be quite frank, tight end
He
20.
he's hurt me a lot.
I don't know. I feel like they should have just kept Hayden Hurst. I feel like that would have been a safer route to go. But I mean, we'll see, man. Maybe Irv Smith, but maybe if Irv Smith is healthy, maybe Irv Smith got a little surprise in there. Tight end 20, I guess that's okay. Once you get down to tight end 20, it kind of just doesn't matter anyway. Even though we
Yeah,
think the tight end renaissance is coming, I don't think the tight end renaissance is going to go 20 tight ends deep. So,
I mean, I think some of the guys. I mean, when you just look at some of the guys going in his range, tight end 18 is Taysom Hill, 19 is Sam Laporta, 20 is Irv Smith, 21 Dawson Knox, 22 Juwan Johnson, 23 Mike Gesicki. Uh, I think outside of everyone not named Sam Laporta, he maybe has the most upside there. Laporta probably has the most upside of all those guys, but
yeah,
um,
I'm taking Irv over some of those guys.
I think so too. I'm not excited pressing draft on Irv Smith Jr. though.
I thought Mike Gesicki was dead.
Well, apparently he's come back from the dead and he's about to haunt our goddamn dreams. That's what he's gonna do. Um, him and Juju. So
Uh,
it is what it is. But that is the AFC North. Should we go over to the NFC North?
let me get stretching out. It's time for me to get hyped up, man. It's time. Yeah, let's
Well,
go. Let's go.
we do have to talk about the team that is projected to be in fourth place in the division first, and that is going to be
Yep.
those grimy Green Bay Packers. 7.5 win total. How do you feel about this, War? They are coming off of a year in 2022 where they finished with 8 wins, and that was with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback.
Oh man, I'm about to. Whew, okay. Whew. All right. Green Bay. Green Bay Packers. All right. What do I feel about them winning 7? It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. Mike Tannenbaum, get it through your thick skull. It's not gonna happen. This clown said that Jordan Love, not Michael Jordan, not Kevin Love, Jordan Love is going to have the best season of all the NFC North quarter. Do you know how stupid you have to be to say something like that? You got to be pretty damn stupid. That's how I know that ESPN is just keeping people, because they're firing everybody, keeping people who just say whatever the hell they want to say just for shock value. Mike Tannenbaum, he was the Jets general manager. No wonder you lost your job. If you think that the Jordan Love is going to be the best quarterback in the NFC North, you must be smoking and funny cigarettes. Now, you're talking about Green Bay here. You're talking about, oh, yeah, we got the running backs. We got a solid defense, yada yada yada. I heard someone say earlier, oh yeah, they have Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs. Those guys were good with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, he's gone. He's gone, and they need to accept it. They're going to be the doormat for the Lions, the Bears, and the Vikings for the foreseeable future. Andrew doesn't have to show me any of their weapons. They all trash. Aaron Jones, washed. Thizilla, trash. Christian Watson, mid. Romeo Dobbs, irrelevant without Aaron Rodgers. Jordan Love, let's see here. Jordan Love, let's see. What's that I just sent to the group chat earlier? Jordan Love had an eye-opening day versus the Bengals defense. That's a different team. So it's not the Packers, the team who's been practicing against the entire offseason. It's a different team. He had an eye-opening day versus the Bengals defense. And a Green Bay staffer, not a Cincinnati Bengals staffer, a Green Bay staffer said, and I quote, I'm sure he's licking his wounds, feeling a little humiliated, but it's not always going to be gumballs and butterflies. And the crazy thing is, this is a daily thing, dude. This is a daily thing. This isn't just like some one-off bad off-season comment. Jordan Love has been having a horrible off-season. Worse than Justin Fields. Look, I'll be full disclosure here. Last offseason, I told my league mates, Andrew and all these guys, I told my league mates, I said, hey, no, Fields is going to be great. He's going to be great this season. You know what? The truth is, the entire camp, I heard about how he sucked. And until that spurt he had last season, he was exactly what they said during training camp. Jordan Love is not a good quarterback. He's not. They're trying to prove that the mistake they made in the first place isn't a mistake. It is a mistake. You effed up big time, son. Jordan Love is going to be trash. Jair Alexander is picking this dude off and they're hyping him up saying, wake up. They're trash. Andrew, go on. I could do this all day. Go on.
Let's talk about the players that are going to be playing with Jordan Love after you've just humiliated him. But the ADP of these guys going in the top 200, keep in mind this is super flex. Quarterback Jordan Love, the first guy off the board for the team, 46.3. That is good for quarterback 21. And Christian Watson, 65 ADP, good for wide receiver 21 as well. Aaron Jones, 67.9, good for running back 17. A.J. Dillon, ADP of 120, good for running back 33. And then Romeo Dobbs and Jaden Reed as their wide receiver 2 and presumably wide receiver 3 with an ADP of 144 and 182. That's good for wide receiver 56 and wide receiver 72. One guy who missed the list because he isn't being drafted in the top 200, rookie tight end Luke Musgrave. Was ADP 207, but he missed the list. So I guess what I want to ask you, War, and one thing that stands out to me is, keep in mind, I'm going to give you the analysis without my Minnesota Vikings hat on. I purposely did not wear it today for you guys so I could give you full disclosure, the good analysis without the trying to do it without the purple tinted lenses. But I think that for the most part, none of these ADPs are egregious. I don't think any of these are bad ADPs. I think they're all being drafted pretty accurately. I would say for myself personally, I think that Jaden Reed is being undervalued as far as on his own team for the most part, because I would say that Jaden Reed is going to outperform Romeo Dobbs this year. But that's just a personal thing for me, I guess. I do see we have a couple comments in here. Says no one who attended Green Bay's training camp has said he's been horrible, and Jair hasn't had a single pick. And
what color is his logo? Is green. Clearly, he must be a Packers fan, because if I'm reading stuff that's from their camp, I could find a whole bunch of stuff that talks about how trash Jordan Love has been and how bad he struggled in camp. So someone has on their turd green lenses and then looking at the not Minnesota Packers, Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love has been trash.
Well, I want to talk about Christian Watson because Christian Watson kind of came onto the scene last year for a few weeks and then he kind of disappeared, which was unfortunate. But a lot of that was due to touchdowns. Uh, from weeks 10 to week 13, he was a top 10 wide receiver at the position every single week for those 4 weeks of football. It was a month of football that he really just lit up the stat sheet for you. But when you go back and you look at the year as a whole, I know he missed some time with some injuries and he wasn't completely healthy. Fantasy points per game was good for wide receiver 32 at 11.7 fantasy points per game. I think my biggest argument has been it's going to be hard for the Green Bay Packers to be as efficient as they were offensively with the departure of Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers has been the heart and soul of that team for a long time. Um, they've been fairly efficient and at times highly efficient with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, but I just don't see that coming from Jordan Love. Um, got to watch Jordan Love in person at Utah State the times that I was living in Utah. Just really not impressed with Jordan Love. I'm not writing him off. I'm not saying that he's going to be a bum. I just think that the reality of it is that a lot of Green Bay Packers fans, at least the sentiment that I'm getting, is they really would like this to be like the transition that they had when they went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, and now they're going from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. I think people are giving Aaron Rodgers too much credit. I've heard it multiple times now, where it's Aaron Rodgers could teach this kid something. They're saying it about Zach Wilson right now too in New
Yeah.
York. Well, if anybody can fix Zach Wilson, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers. And sure, it's good to learn from a vet. It's good to have kind of a mentor, a presence on the field that plays the position with you. But at the end of the day, guys, Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Fame talent. You don't just find those. You don't find them. They don't just come around every time that you change quarterbacks. I think Green Bay is going to be fine. 7.5 wins for me. It feels accurate. I think they're gonna land somewhere. I think between 6 and 8. That's kind of where I think that they're gonna land. So sure, they could maybe get over that 7.5, but I think the reality of the situation for me is all of these guys, as far as fantasy football goes, are being valued accurately. And I'm not actively seeking these guys on my rosters because I'm just not super confident in the offense being very high scoring as a whole. But there's a couple guys that I would definitely draft if there was a value on them. I would take Jordan Love as a QB3 in my Superflex leagues. I would take Aaron Jones as an RB3. I would take maybe Jaden Reed late just because I'm a fan of Jaden Reed. I think Jaden Reed's going to be solid. Um, any closing remarks from you, War? We do have one more comment that says Rodgers is the most efficient QB of all time, but his statistics from last season are easily replaceable. I think you kind of answered the question there in the comment as well. He's highly, highly efficient, and it's going to be hard to replicate that. The stats, I don't know, but the efficiency is kind of what I'm looking at.
Yeah, like there's no way. Like you get two camps of people when it comes to Green Bay. What I noticed, you get the guys who dislike Roger strongly on his way out, who are delusionally saying that Jordan Love could easily replace Aaron Rodgers. And those are the same people that are in the same camp of thinking that Jordan Love's going to be good because Brett Favre was there, then Aaron Rodgers was there, and now since there's another guy, look, let me explain something to you. Green Bay has had 30 years of excellent quarterback play. Me and Andrew had to sit back and watch it. It's completely normal for you guys to have a quarterback that sucks. That's most of the NFL. Having a quarterback,
Even a quarterback that's average.
yeah, even a quarterback that's average. You get what I'm saying? So I mean, maybe Jordan Love is average, or maybe he is slightly above average. But to think that Aaron Rodgers is easily replaceable, I understand. Okay, you're looking at stats, but let's look at intangibles. Jordan Love is probably not going to put his foot on the throat of the NFC North like Aaron Rodgers did. That's highly unlikely. If Jordan Love is a Hall of Fame quarterback like Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, I will eat my hat. I'll find a hat and I'll eat it live on camera. Jordan Love is just not going to be good. So let me talk about some of these other players really
Hold
quick.
on. I want to challenge you, War. If Jordan Love is a top 12 quarterback in fantasy football this year, the first or the when we do the NFC North preview next year, you have to wear a Green Bay Packers hat. The whole episode.
Deal.
All right.
Deal. I'll wear a hat and a jersey.
All right.
I'll wear a hat and a jersey, but it's not going to happen. So it's not going to happen. Just to briefly
So what about
touch,
some of these other players?
Yeah, I think Aaron Jones does have value. As I still think he's a decent, solid running back. He does have some value. And if you're going to have him, you might as well. If you can get his backup as a handcuff, I would do that. I do like Aaron Jones to be maybe like the running back 3 or flex option on the team. And I do like Christian Watson as a stash player. I mean, I just don't think Jordan Love is going to be good. So if I could stash Christian Watson, he's young, and like maybe Green Bay somehow gets like a serviceable quarterback after Jordan Love is gone. I'm writing them off completely, guys. If they can get a serviceable quarterback after
War.
Jordan,
I gotta cut the Packers slander because we do want these people to come back and listen to the show. We don't need you out here. We don't want you
hey,
out here just pissing everybody off, guys.
hey, look,
It is what it
look,
is, guys. He's a Chicago Bears fan.
yeah, and
Aaron Rodgers
I've been
has
eating
offended
crap for
you.
years, so it's time for you to take. Matter of fact, hold on, man. What am I doing? What am I doing? I just realized something. Like, no.
Yeah, you had the green lights on.
Yeah,
Earlier.
like, yeah.
I
I was
know.
had the green light go. I had to go,
I
but
know.
yeah, no, I'm taking that green off.
It is what it is. But let's transition. Let's talk about a team that I am sure you will have a lot to say about. Currently projected to finish third overall in the NFC North. It is going to be your Chicago Bears. War. Projected to win 7.5 games. They're coming off of a season last year. You are fully aware where they won 3 games. They went 3-14 and finished the year on a 10-game losing streak. Talk to me about Justin Fields. I am sure the guy that we've been debating Packers with is going to have a lot to say to you about these Chicago Bears. But how do you feel about the 7.5 wins? And then after you tell me how you feel about that, let's talk the players.
Some Bears fans see the lights orange now. Some Bears fans.
Oh, here you go. You guys are friends now.
Hey, we have that in common. I have Fields on every single team I have. All right, it's a good choice. I'm gonna be very fair with the Bears. I'm not gonna be like one of those super delusional Bears fans. I mean, if they surprise me and win 10 games, great. But 7 or 8 wins sounds about right. They did lose like 7 games last season by like 1 score. They improved. I've seen something pretty interesting, and I don't know if you pulled up the same thing, but I was watching another YouTuber, and I don't know where he got his ranking from, but they had the Bears offensive line ranked 5th, like after the Philadelphia Eagles. And I've been hearing from what I've been hearing out of training camp for the Bears, they've been making it seem like the Greek gods have been protecting Justin Fields during the offseason. They've definitely been hyping up the Bears offensive line during the offseason as a top offensive line unit. So Fields is going to be the last piece of this team I get to. The running back room, I think they have a solid running back room with Khalil Herbert, Dante Foreman, and possibly Rashawn Johnson. Their wide receiver corps, I feel like, has the chance to be extremely, extremely valuable. DJ Moore with the best quarterback he's ever played with.
Well, let's talk about the ADPs. Before you get into the whole team, I want to show the ADP so we can talk about them. These are the guys being drafted in the top 200. You've already touched on some of them, but Justin Fields is coming off the board as the 6th overall player. That's good for QB6. DJ Moore, ADP of 69. Good for wide receiver 23. Khalil Herbert is projected by drafters to be your lead running back right now. ADP 131. Good for running back 40. Darnell Mooney, ADP of 155, good for wide receiver 60. Cole Kmet, 157, good for tight end 17. And then you got Roshan Johnson and Deontay Foreman, 166 and 169. That's running back 49 and 51. So I'll let you take the lead here, man, but just wanted to make sure that we showed people the ADPs of these guys before we started talking too much about them.
There's one person omitted from this list now, and that's who I'm going to start with.
It's a guy who didn't crack.
Yeah, it. I've sold at the beginning of the offseason. I've sold shares of him left to right. I sold them everywhere. And you know me, Bears training camp, I live DJ Moore. Bears training camp,
I agree.
I live it. I digest Bears training camp news each and every day. And what they've been saying that Chase Claypool has been doing to the defense during training camp, I had to buy a share of Chase Claypool. I only have one now. I had to have one because they're saying that he's looking like Mapletron out there, like that he's just bodying guys, going up and grabbing it. Like he did come up, pull his hamstring today, which is something I wouldn't be surprised if Claypool just has an injury-riddled season and is trash. I wouldn't be surprised there. But I do think that people may have possibly wrote him off a little bit too hard because of him coming in the middle of the season and trying to learn offense. That's not an easy thing to do. Like, unless you're one of those elite wide receivers, like most guys can't just join the team and just seamlessly go out there and start like dominating. I mean, so I think Claypool needed that, but his health, permitted. I think he deserves to be in the top 200 more so than Dante Foreman. Like there's even a part of me, even though they say he's doing really good in camp, there's a part of me that wouldn't be surprised if he gets cut with the way the team loves Roshan Johnson. Khalil Herbert. Well, so I feel like the Bears running back group is just average. Like average, like you can win with them, but like none of them are going to be like league winners unless it's Roshan Johnson, and that's only if you draft him late in the draft and he ends up taking over the backfield. That's the only way you can see like a league winner coming out of that backfield. DJ Moore, I think he's going to have an excellent season. He's the one who's dominating camp even more so than Claypool. Like he's making the Bears defense look like his kids. Like and it's ridiculous the feats that him and Justin Fields are pulling off together. I have no issue with where Justin is being drafted. I think that's accurate. Yeah, I'm more curious to know what you think about the ADP of some of the.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, as we go and look at this, just gut reactions. I think Justin Fields is being drafted accurately. When you look at last season's statistics, obviously not a lot of passing yardage. He was doing a ton of rushing, but that doesn't mean that he scored any less fantasy football points. From a fantasy points per game standpoint, he was top 5 overall with 20.5 points per game. So coming off the board as QB6, if he rushes about the same, maybe a little bit less, but passes a little bit more, it could be very similar numbers for Justin Fields. So I don't have any gripe with where he's being drafted. I do think that DJ Moore is being a little bit undervalued right now. It's hard for me to think that I would be drafting 70 guys ahead of DJ Moore. I guess 68 guys is where the ADP's at. It's hard for me to think that I would do that. Coming off the board as, like I said, wide receiver 23, when you look at the wide receivers around him, some of the wide receivers being drafted ahead of him are who we just talked about, Christian Watson, Drake London. He's in a tier with DeAndre Hopkins, Jerry Jeudy, Keenan Allen. I would argue that the upside of Justin Fields is just as high as those guys, maybe more. And if DJ Moore does, I mean, if Justin Fields does take that step forward that we think he can do, um, I don't know if it's essentially the same as AJ Brown to Jalen Hurts, but if it's AJ Brown to Jalen Hurts light and you're getting top 12, top 15 numbers from DJ Moore, that's a value. When it comes down to the rest of these guys, I think one thing that I don't mind taking a shot on, we talked about David Njoku and Pat Fryermuth earlier. At their ADPs, I wasn't in, but it's because you can get guys like Cole Kmet here, who, whether you want Fryermuth more in Dynasty, I would rather have Fryermuth over Kmet in Dynasty. But from a redraft perspective, um, if I can get Cole Kmet 10 or 8 to 9 tight ends later, why not? I just feel like it's just a value, I think, on Cole Kmet this year. And then, especially because when you look at his finishes last year, let's just look at the finishes of Cole Kmet, especially as we got to the end of the season. Because when I pull Cole Kmet's numbers up, I'm sure you're very aware, War, but
Yep.
he was top 16 in fantasy football points per game. Again, he's being drafted as top 17, so you're drafting him about where he finished last year. But when you look at the game log, it's almost as if, like, when the Bears decided that they wanted to try and start passing the football, Cole Kmet had 2 finishes in the last 5 weeks in the top 5 overall at the position. And if you go a couple weeks before that, he was number 1 and number 2 in weeks 10 and 9. So it's I think the upside is there with Cole Kmet. And if you don't trust the other receiving options, like I don't trust Claypool, I don't trust Mooney. I think Cole Kmet is clearly the second option. And when I'm targeting tight ends late in drafts, I want guys who can be the second receiving target. And I think outside of DJ Moore, it's going to be Cole Kmet for me. When I go to the running backs, I know Khalil Herbert is being drafted as the number 1 running back right now. If I were to take a shot, I would go cheaper and draft Roshan Johnson a few rounds later and hope that I get the starting running back because I think he's more talented than Khalil Herbert. But I guess that's to be seen. They're both cheap enough that I don't really fault you for going either way. And then we do have a comment here that says, I guess that's where the difference in reporting is coming from. Fields gets to go up against the Bears defense. Love has to play the Packers D. Um,
Mm.
eh. But for what it's worth, man, I think your guys are pretty accurately. I think they're pretty accurately valued at ADP right now. I mean, really, the only one that I have a gripe with is I think I think there's values on Komet and Moore, and I think that's just because I have confidence that Fields can take a step forward in the passing game. So Komet and Moore are a little bit of values to me. Everybody else I'm indifferent on. I don't know if I'm going to be targeting Mooney or Herbert or any of those guys really.
Yeah, like a lot of those guys are just like good guys to have a part of your bench unit, to be honest. Cole Kmet, if you're going to go with like a 0 tight end type of roster where like you ignore the tight end position to the end, near the end of the draft, then I think Cole Kmet is a good starting tight end for you because I think he could give you a good 8 to 10 points here and there and maybe even some 20-point weeks too. So
I've done it plenty times this offseason where I've punted the tight end position in a lot of these best ball drafts or these underdog drafts, and I've took like 2 tight ends pretty quickly as I got to the end, and I've been double tapping on like Cole Kmet and Dalton Schultz, Cole Kmet and Sam Laporta, Cole Kmet and Irv Smith, like things like that. Like I don't mind grabbing a couple of those, but I think Laporta and Dalton Schultz and Cole Kmet, those are kind of my guys in that tier down there
yeah,
for this year. But yeah, man, I don't have anything else about the Bears. Do you have anything else about the Bears?
nope, I think I've said enough.
All right, man. Well, we got 2 more teams here. We did say it would be about 90 minutes. It looks like we're going to be pretty accurate with that. But let's talk about the team that is projected to finish second overall in the NFC North this year. They are coming off of an NFC division title in 2022, but at 8.5 wins, they got the Minnesota Vikings. They did come off of a season last year where some would say they over exceeded or over succeeded. And I would agree to a point because when you look at the one score games, they did win a lot of those games. But the Vikings went 13-4. War, how do you feel about 8.5 wins for the Minnesota Vikings?
I'm going to respect Minnesota a little more than that. I mean, they deserve to be, they deserve to have a chance to have the benefit of the doubt of their win total. Who's to say that they won't win another bunch of games that are just one score? Maybe that's just an intangible that the team has. Maybe the team is clutch. I mean, until they prove otherwise, then I think we have to say that they're going to win more than 8.5 games. I mean, they didn't really. I mean, I know we're not doing it just because they lost Dalvin Cook. I mean, Dalvin Cook is a good running back, but running backs are very easily replaceable. Yeah, I think I'll definitely I'll go at the over. I'll go at the over for Minnesota.
Yeah, me too. And obviously, I have purple tinted lenses when I speak about this team, but I did place a very sizable bet on DraftKings. Let's just see when I placed it. I placed this months ago, in September, actually, of last year. Uh,
Hmm.
Actually, no, I'm looking at the wrong date. I placed this in May of this year. So a few months ago now at this point, and I placed a sizable bet on them to win the North. So I'm confident in them. I just think, to me, and I'm saying this as a fan, but I'm also trying to say this as an analyst. You have a team that won 13 games. They didn't really get worse. You could argue that the offensive line got better. You could argue the defense has gotten a little bit better. And then, they lost Dalvin Cook, and yes, they lost Adam Thielen on the offensive side of the ball. But Alexander Madison steps in as the starting running back, and then you draft Jordan Addison, who I think should be a serviceable replacement to Adam Thielen, especially with some of the production we were getting out of Adam Thielen as he aged there in Minnesota. I think 8.5 is a little bit disrespectful. I'm not going to say this is a 13-win football team. I don't think it is. But 10 wins does not sound ridiculous to me.
No, it doesn't.
So I'm definitely taking the over on this. But let's talk about some of the guys and the ADPs of these guys on this team. Because the highest drafted player on this roster is going to be Justin Jefferson, coming off the board with an ADP of 8.3. That is the wide receiver one in fantasy football in these drafts right now. Kirk Cousins coming off the board with an ADP of 17.2. That's good for QB 12. TJ Hawkinson off the board with an ADP of 64.5. Good for tight end 3. And then you got Alexander Madison stepping in for Dalvin Cook as the starter, ADP of 74.3. That's good for running back 18. And then again, we have these two wide receivers to round out the top 200. That's going to be Jordan Addison with an ADP of 102 and KJ Osborne with an ADP of 169. That's wide receiver 37 and wide receiver 66 for KJ Osborne. So, War, how do you feel about these guys' ADPs?
I feel pretty good about him. I like Jordan Addison. Well, okay, never mind. I was looking at it wrong. I like the ADPs. JJ, where he is, just like a no-brainer. Kirk Cousins, it's an okay ranking. Alexander Madison,
Q12.
Yeah. I think you could do a lot worse than Kirk Cousins. Madison, not a fan. Not a
Me
fan of
either.
Madison. You get KJ Osborne late, put him on your bench. Great. I think the biggest steal in those ADPs, honestly, is Jordan Addison. I think he's going to have a pretty damn good year. He's going to have a pretty good damn year. TJ Hawkinson. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
TJ was he the tight end 3?
Yeah, tight end 3 in drafts right now.
Yeah, TJ. And this is why
Wheels
you
up.
can't. Yeah, this is why it's disrespectful to say they're only going to win 9 games. Like, offensively, they have everything they need. I think people just get bored of Kirk Cousins, and I think that's a lot of why they didn't even lose Danielle Hunter yet. If they lose Danielle Hunter, okay, maybe then we could be like, okay,
He signed an
9 wins.
extension.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I don't see a reason why this team would lose. What was it 6 more games? They're not that many games worse.
Yeah, they would lose. They went from 13 and now they're projected 9.5.
What's their? Do you know their strength of schedule?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I can probably find it.
Yeah, because I'm trying to investigate why they think they're going to drop from 13 wins to 8 to 9 wins.
Let's see. Strength of schedule. 25.
Okay, so yeah, I
So
have no. This is like
a
a
little
mystery.
bit tougher than average, but nothing crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, dude. I think Minnesota has. Well, I think they have. It has to be those close games, and I don't feel like that's enough to determine if a team is going to be that much worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, just speaking from a fan standpoint and speaking from just a fantasy standpoint, when I look at these ADPs, and I'm going to pop them up on the screen again, we said Kirk Cousins is being drafted as the QB 12. That has been what he has done in Minnesota for the last 3 years. He was QB 11 in 2020, QB 12 in 2021, and QB 11 in 2022. So that's pretty much where you're getting him. I would say that maybe if you play in a 6-point passing touchdown, I would maybe even move that up to like QB 10, QB 9, maybe, depending on how Jordan Addison plays out here. But I think it's a no brainer. I just I don't really hear an argument for why JJ shouldn't be the wide receiver one. That just feels like that should be written in. Hawkinson, I like the ADP there. It seems high. I don't know if I'm going to get a ton of Hawkinson shares, but it's accurate. I mean, it's kind of what he's done since he got to Minnesota. And let's look at the fantasy points per game for TJ Hawkinson, because it's just not. It's tough, man, because I feel like I play with this mindset of if it's not Kelsey and it's not Andrews, then I'm just going to punt the position. That's kind of how I play.
Yeah.
And last year, from a points per game standpoint, though, and keep in mind, this isn't the full year with Hawkinson, but from a points per game standpoint, he was number 4 overall last year. And it improved when he got to Minnesota. So 3 doesn't feel wrong. It just feels like if it's not Andrews and it's not Kelsey, I don't want it. But I don't mind it. When it does come down to it, though, you said it. You don't really like the Alexander Madison ADP. I don't really like it either. And I think it's because I'm not sold on him being this high-end starter. I know he's being drafted as running back 18, so it's not like he's being very high-end. But at 18, you're expecting him to be this high to mid RB2 on your roster. And when you look at the running backs around him, it's guys like Joe Mixon, Kenneth Walker, Aaron Jones, Miles Sanders, J.K. Dobbins. And I would take a few of those guys over Alexander Madison.
Yeah, I like all those guys more than Alexander Madison.
So it just feels like he's gotten up into a tier where I prefer the other guys. Not that Alexander Madison is going to be bad for fantasy football. I just think I prefer the other guys in the tier with him. And then you said it, Addison could be a steal this year. But really what I think is going to be the steal is you see KJ Osborne down there. You were a year early, War, maybe 2 years early. You were pumping KJ Osborne. But being drafted as what did I say it was? It was like wide receiver freaking 66. There's a chance that he plays half of this season as the wide receiver too. And when we look at KJ Osborne last year, I want to talk about his finish because he finished some games there that were he was looking good for the Vikings, man. I'm going to pull up his game log right here so we can talk about it. But you don't think he's a value at 66?
Okay, KJ Osborne?
Yeah.
Yeah, he is. He is. He's a
So
guy with
so
definitely one on my bench. I just think I like Jordan Addison more.
Yeah, they're going to run 3 wide receiver sets though. They're guaranteed to run that.
Yeah.
Especially because they're just going to run 3 wide receiver sets.
But
But
just
I
going
wanted
by
to share
the history of the Vikings, that third wide receiver never comes to fruition.
fair.
And
But
now they have an elite tight end. So it's
true,
like,
true, true. From a fantasy points per game standpoint, last year he was wide receiver 51. So being drafted to 66, but last year he was 51. There's a value there. And then if you look in the last 5 weeks of the season, week 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Now I know that there's some playoff games in there. But wide receiver 2 on the week, wide receiver 11 in week 17, 12 in 18, and then 22 in 19. So he was finishing the season pretty hot for the Vikings. A couple of those games where he was getting 7 targets, 6 targets, red zone looks, touchdowns, just things like that, man. It's and one of them, week 15 in Indianapolis, he got 16 targets. So KJ Osborne, I think he's a value coming off the board at wide receiver 66, and he's definitely somebody that I'm throwing a dart throw on him pretty much at the end of every draft.
yeah, I mean, you have to.
And I think the offense is going to be a good enough passing offense with Kevin O'Connell and Kirk Cousins that somebody's going to be valuable. And in the off chance, I hope this is not the case, but in the off chance that Jordan Addison needs a year or two to get going, KJ Osborne's going to have to take on that second wide receiver role, and he could be pretty valuable. So that's all I have for the Vikings. So I'll finish it off with a skull, but let's talk about the team that has the number one odds or the highest win total percentage. And I'm sure you and I are going to have some things to say about it, but it is going to be these Detroit Lions. They do have a projected win total of 9.5 wins. Last year they were 9-8, finished the season on a 2-game win streak. War, how do you feel about the Detroit Lions?
They're still losers. They're still losers. I mean, so the way I look at the Detroit Lions is the same way I look at they're the Cleveland Browns of the NFC North. Like, where it's like, okay, you say that we've lived through this before. Like, people, this isn't the first iteration of, oh, the Lions have finally figured out the Lions. We had this with Stafford and Megatron, and they couldn't get it done. Like, they had they had all this before. They had a good offensive line. They had a solid defense. They had a quarterback that was better than the one they have now, and they've had a wide receiver that's better generationally, better than what they have now. So, now, okay, 9.5 wins isn't even like
It's not
a
crazy.
ridiculous amount. It's not crazy. It's just the entire idea. I think the Lions are going to fall flat on their face. I don't think the Lions are going to go well with expectations. I don't believe in the sustainability of Jared Goff. I do like Jahmyr Gibbs, but I do not think David Montgomery is anything special. I do like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he's a very, 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 very good wide receiver. I think that Jameson Williams is going to end up being a bust, despite what I've said many, many videos ago. I have turned a leaf on that. I think he's going to be a bust. And I'm
not victory lapping yet.
Not victory lapping yet. I think this defense is all full of piss and vinegar from having a coach that's, one
Biting
of those
kneecaps.
rah-rah coaches. I don't think that defense I do think their offensive line is legit. So all those things combined just says average team to me. A team that's not going to be able to meet the expectations that the media and a lot of the fans are putting forth for the Detroit Lions. And I would not be prove me wrong, Detroit. Beat Kansas City in opening week. You beat Kansas City, I'll take back everything I said.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted it earlier because I tweeted, this graphic with the 9.5 wins, and I just said the Lions haven't won their division since 1993 when the NFC North was the NFC Central. They're currently plus 140 to win the NFC North, and they have projected regular season win total set at 9.5 wins. Are you taking the over under in 23? And I'm going to be taking probably the under, but I will say, War, I'm not like super confident in taking the under. I do think this is a solid team. I just don't think that they are the best team in the division. And they're being on DraftKings Sportsbook, they're being bet like they are heavy favorites. They're the only team in the NFC North with minus money. So everybody else is positive money. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But let's talk about some of the guys that are on this team, because I do think that they have some pretty interesting fantasy football assets. And you see the guy in the chains over there, Jared. But we do have Jared Goff. He's coming off the board, ADP of 30. That's good for QB 17. Amon-Ra St. Brown, ADP of 34. That's good for wide receiver 10. Jahmyr Gibbs, ADP of 52. That's good for running back 12. Montgomery with an ADP of 89. Good for running back 23. Jameson Williams, ADP of 126. Good for wide receiver 48. And then finishing it off, rookie Sam Laporta, tight end, ADP of 163. That's good for tight end 19. So does anything on here stick out to you, War? How do you feel about these ADPs and where these guys are currently being valued?
I see a lot too many double-digit ADPs in here, and not enough triple-digit ADPs. Like these guys are being heavily overrated. First of all, Jared Goff, dude, you're not Kirk Cousins, bro. Like he's wearing chains. Like he's not Kirk Cousins. This is the same
Every
quarterback.
quarterback in the NFL is doing that now. Even Sauce Gardner got Aaron Rodgers some chains.
He deserves to wear chains. Jared Goff, aka Ryan Gosling, Jared Goff. I remember I said that Jared Goff is nothing but Trubisky with weapons, and Trubisky can run. I still feel like that. I still feel like that. I don't think anything is special about Jared Goff. I think that the league shut down on Jared Goff. I think the league was just like, okay, they did the whole Drake meme. It's like they said Jared Goff no, right? They said Jared Goff no, and then Jared Goff snuck back up on the league as if he just got there. And now nobody's going to be going in and saying, okay, we're playing Jared Goff. Now they're going to go in and say, okay, we playing Jared Goff. They're like, yeah, I think that's when I have doubt for the Lions, that's the biggest part of my doubt is Jared Goff. Everything else can be reasoned with. Like, okay, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, that is a nice backfield. Amon-Ra, and maybe if you look at the totality of their wide receiver corps, it's not a bad wide receivers corps. They have young, solid tight ends. Like their defense is okay. Their offensive line is elite. But it's just that one thing, and that one thing is Jared Goff, man. I'm just not buying it. And if you don't got the quarterback, if you're going to be trying to bring in Hendon Hooker midseason, I just don't see these guys living up to the expectation as far as ADP. After Amon-Ra, I guess it's okay having Jared Goff at quarterback 17.
17.
I mean, that's above Garoppolo, guys like that. I agree with that. Jahmyr Gibbs is where? Can you pull it back up?
Running back 12 overall. That's ADP of 52.2.
Okay, maybe he needs to prove that spot a little bit. Amon-Ra, I'm good with Amon-Ra. David Montgomery, I think he's washed, man. I watched him be washed. So he's running back what?
He's being drafted as running back 23. I know a lot of people feel like he's going to step in and take that massive touchdown workload that Jamal Williams is leaving.
Yeah, that's not going to happen because he's had that opportunity for the Bears. And yes, we could say, okay, well, the Bears don't have the Lions offensive line, and that may be true. I just think Monty. Believe me, I think. Well, I'll outright say it. Jamal Williams to me is just a better running back than David Montgomery. He's just like David Montgomery is a decent backup running back, but to think that he's going to do what Jamal Williams did is laughable. It's laughable.
It's also when you have touchdown seasons like that, those are outlier seasons. They don't
Yeah,
happen like that.
yeah,
And I think the reality of it too is, I I don't want to be that guy. But I've been a fan of Jahmyr Gibbs for a long time. When he was even a freshman at Georgia Tech and he was balling over there, like I've been a fan of Jahmyr Gibbs. I've been pumping him up. Um, as long as this show has been a thing, I've been pumping up Jahmyr Gibbs, and you can attest to that, War. But I think they have a more talented back than DeAndre Swift was. I think Gibbs is more
yeah.
talented than Swift. I will say that, and I think Gibbs, wide or running back 12, definitely in the range of outcomes. I think you're right. He probably has to prove that a little bit more. But if he gets up to there, it's going to be because he's being used in the receiving game. But when we talk about some of these guys, man, Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, there's not a lot in here that I dislike. Jared Goff being drafted as QB 17 last year, he was 14th overall in points per game at the quarterback position. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 10th overall last year from
Yeah.
wide receiver fantasy points per game, and he's being drafted as wide receiver 10. So it seems like they're all being pretty accurately represented. The only one that I don't really want is Jameson Williams. And I don't need to get deep into this, but he's being drafted within the top 50 wide receivers. He has a 6-game suspension on the horizon. And then after that, even last year in spurts, he didn't show a ton to me that impressed me. With the suspension and coming in mid-season, I just don't want much of Jameson Williams. But I will tell you right now, at the 163rd player off the board and tight end 19, Sam Laporta, that's interesting to me. I don't mind taking a shot on Sam Laporta at the end of my builds and letting him be my backup tight end and see if there's something special there with Sam Laporta.
Yeah, why not? Take a shot on the rook. Tight ends usually don't develop, but
Hey, we said we think this rookie class can be the start of a renaissance at the tight end position.
yeah,
And
yeah,
if they are, Sam Laporta is going to need to do something. So maybe, just maybe, you can get a value on Laporta down there.
yeah.
I mean, the
There's no,
reality of it too is, War, if with uh, Jameson having that 6-game suspension to start the year, there really is not a lot of other receiving options. And so Laporta is going to have to be utilized the first 6 weeks of the season.
yeah, he's gonna have to, and that might relegate Jameson to even be used even less once he gets back. So we'll see, dude.
Yeah, man. So that is the NFC North. So we did cover the Norths today. I think we did all right on time, man. I'm very excited to do the rest of these divisions. We got 3 more shows until the first game of football, and 3 more directions to cover, East, South, and West. Of those divisions before the season starts. So good things coming. NFL preseason games tomorrow. I'm going to be watching. My Vikings play tomorrow. They play the Seahawks. So hopefully we can see some Jordan Addison and some JSN. That'll be pretty fun to watch. And other than that, man, I got nothing else. Do you got anything before we get out of here, War?
Nah, man, we shot all our live rounds today, so
Hell
nah.
yeah. All right, man. I appreciate you, and I appreciate everybody tapping in and debating some fantasy football with us today. We will see you guys next week on Let's Talk Dynasty, and we'll talk about another one of these divisions. You'll see a thumbnail here pretty shortly. So thank you, guys. We'll see you on the next one.
You know.
Peace out.